Hi everybody, welcome back to the Gallagher Chats YouTube channel, and we are back with another live show. Tonight I'm joined by the lovely Shell. How are you doing, Shell?
Hi, evening. I'm good, thank you. I've got my beer, so I'm happy. Have my Chinese, it's great.
All right, okay, and I'm joined also by the even lovelier Luke Edwards.
Nobody ever thinks that. No, nobody in the world thinks that at all. You don't even believe that. Nobody watching this believes that. I look like I've got jaundice. I know we were talking about that earlier, but I really don't look well.
I mean, I was just going to be nice to you because going off the comments that are coming in, it's going to be the last thing you get. I'll tell you that.
I'm used to it. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm totally used to it.
So this has just been thrown together last minute. There's been a lot of people commenting and replying to the tweet that we put out earlier, just saying that it's obviously been arranged with things which have happened over the last 24 hours, which isn't the case. And you'll both back us up on that one. But we're supposed to be doing something different tonight with Luke involved and a couple of other journalists, which didn't happen in the end, just because people couldn't make it. And Shell, I text you about 10 o'clock this morning thereabouts, asking if you want to jump on just to discuss everything which was proposed in regard to the takeover and alleged things which have been happening in regard to court cases. So I'm going to dive straight in. There's no point beating around the bush on this one. And obviously we've got Luke on, and the last video I'd done with you, Luke, you came across really well in it, to be honest with you. And I
Thank you, Kris. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it wasn't just me. I think you changed a lot of people's opinions on that podcast. You're there wearing your Newcastle shirt, and which I'm not sure if that went down or not. But there was a little clip of that podcast which has been shared God knows how many times by how many people. And I just want to say, if people go back and listen to that clip in full, it's nowhere near as bad as what it looks like in that few seconds is what people grab. So on that clip, mate, you basically said that you purposely wind Newcastle fans up at times to get a reaction. Mm-hmm. So do you want to explain what you actually meant by that once again? I think
yeah, I basically the clip was I enjoy winding up Newcastle fans. I think I said I wind up Newcastle fans. What was left out was I get loads of abuse on Twitter, like all the time for the last, ever since Rafa went really, and I dared to question why the reasons for him going. So when people are abusing me, I quite enjoy winding them up because it just, if you're going to abuse me and come at me with all this abuse, you've got to expect me to give it back a little bit, which is all I do. It's just my personality. And that was edited down to be, I deliberately wind up Newcastle fans, which, look, I do my job. I question everything. I'm cynical. I think we talked about that last time when I was on. It's my job to question things. And I'm not in this industry to tell people what they want to hear. I'm not here to be popular or liked. I just hope people, respect my opinions and listen sometimes and read what I write. That's the whole, that's what I do. But I don't deliberately. I'm married to a Newcastle fan. My entire family on my wife's side are all Newcastle fans. So no, I don't purposely wind them up just for sport. I do it when I'm getting abuse from other people because that's my sense of humour.
And there was a clip as well, mate, which I'm sure a few people share this. I think I actually shared this as well, where you went on to explain why you love the area, why you love living in the Northeast, and why you would never really turn your back on the Northeast. And football was one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I came up to university here partly because of the Kevin Keegan team. I think that, it was Newcastle suddenly became this alluring city, partly for the party city reputation, but also because I was football mad. I was attracted because of that. And, when I left university, I thought I'd go back down to London, but I stayed. I worked for the Journal for 11 years, the local paper. I've married a Geordie. My 2 kids are Geordies. My mum and dad have just moved up from down south to live in Whitley Bay. So I absolutely love this region. And I spend, I've had so many arguments with people down south, even my own brother, for example, about, the merits of the Northeast. And I'm very, very passionate about the area. I've been offered jobs elsewhere and stayed. I do a lot of work in Manchester now, but me and my wife decided that we would keep the family home in Newcastle because I like it so much. And I think the people are great. I think the city's great. And the thing that I've always loved about, not just Geordies actually, but everybody in the Northeast, Sunderland, there's a huge regional pride in where you're from. There's no inferiority complex. There's no trying to be something you're not. It's people from the Northeast are just really proud of where they're from. And it's not, it's not an ideal region. It's not the ideal place to live. It has its problems, but I think it's the best place in the country, and I'm not saying that to try and curry favour. As I said, this is my family home. This is where my 2 kids will be raised, and it's where my family are, and I just love it. And I get really upset when people, I think somebody, I'm not going to name him, somebody told me to leave the city during the takeover saga, and the stuff that was said about me, partly on the back of that video we talked about at the start. But I'm not going to leave the city because this is my home. I've made it my home. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else. And I think that was probably the most hurtful thing to me personally as a person, that was said to me, you should go and report on another club. You should leave the city. Well, you can't tell me that for a start. I'm not going to go anywhere. Sorry to disappoint anyone, but this is my home, and it's my family's home. And I just don't think anybody should be telling me, I can't live in my home based on a disagreement over football.
So on the back of that, once again, I'm the only one on this panel of 3 at the minute that's actually from the Northeast. So Shell, over to you. You just want to explain the whole connection to Newcastle United for yourself as well, just on the back of what Luke's just mentioned as well?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I know there's been a lot of discussion with lots of other podcasts about people being proper fans and what it is to be a proper fan. And I know that Luke and I were just actually discussing it before we came on. It actually feels a bit sad that we have to justify ourselves. But yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Newcastle. My dad is from Newcastle. He's a proper Geordie, if that's what counts. And I've got 2 older brothers, so it's the first game that I went to, it's the first ground that I went to. And then I moved to the Midlands, and obviously we've known each other now for quite a long time. You know that I come up, COVID aside, I used to come up 3 or 4 times every couple of months to watch the games. I religiously go to all of the away days. And I was saying to Luke, I was looking through my photos just to find some memories of Newcastle, actually, when people go to call people out. And I didn't post them. So I said to Luke, no, I don't have to justify that I'm a proper fan. I've been to the ground hundreds of times. I've been to the away days. I have a massive circle of friends who are all Geordies. Dated one for a little while, as you know. Massive fan of the city and of the club. And I think, whatever people think, the fact that we're getting abuse online about whether we're proper fans and who's a better fan. I was said today, you don't understand because my blood flows black and white, People don't choose to be Newcastle fans generally. I mean, it's not exactly glory supporting, is it? Do you know what I mean? That's my connection. I've always supported them. I've had my Twitter page for several years and just kind of gone under the radar. But as Luke, well knows, and all of us on the podcast, as soon as you want to pipe up and have an opinion on it that everyone doesn't agree with, then the personal criticism starts coming in.
Yeah, and there's a few people that I'm quite looking. So if my head turns, because I'm looking at the comments here on the laptop, and there's a few people saying in capital letters here that Luke is not a Newcastle United fan. We know he's not a Newcastle United fan. Okay, nobody said that Luke's a Newcastle fan. Going back, he's saying he loves the area. Nothing to do with being a fan of the club. Luke reports on the club. Everybody knows that, and he has done for a number of years. But I can't hide away from this anymore because God knows how many comments have been sent in on this one, Luke. Henry Mauriss, you knew this was going to come up. Where is he?
Where's Henry? It's one of the great Twitter tags, isn't it? Where's Henry? Believe it or not, I actually got a call from someone today saying they're still talking. Look, they might still be talking, but I'm a kind of get the deal done kind of guy. You can talk and talk and talk. They've been talking for weeks, months. So I've lost interest, to be honest. The only time I think about Henry Mauriss is when somebody reminds me on Twitter, which is pretty much every day. He's still there, but look, if the money's there, it's a really easy deal to do. So we keep being told by the Ashley side. If the money's there, it would have been done by now. So look, I'm not worried about Henry Mauriss. I reported there was an interest. The interest was genuine. I wasn't the only newspaper who reported the interest. I wasn't the only person who was in contact with them. I was very skeptical at first. I think I said when it first came out, ignore it. The Saudi deal was so far along the line, just don't worry about it. But as the Saudi deal began to unravel, shall we say, and exclusivity had gone, I was told he was going to step in and he was ready to step in. I thought that, if it was going to be done, I think it would be done by now. So I'm told they're still talking, but what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? What does talking mean? Just if you've got the money, buy the football club. So we'll see where it leads. I'm honestly not worried about it. I don't mind people saying, "Where's Henry?" You know, I'd actually quite makes you chuckle. So that's going to be me laughing at Newcastle fans now, edited down into a clip. But it makes me laugh when people say it, because it is funny. I said, "Where Henry Mauriss is ready to take over," and it didn't happen. So look, everybody gets takeover stories wrong. We've seen that with the Saudi thing. It could still happen. I'm not saying it's over, because if they're still talking, I'm told the money's there, but I've given up on it. I don't even think about it. It's just when people tell me on Twitter, "Where's Henry?" So
do you think we can say now? Can we say now that it's not really a serious bidder? Because if it was a serious bidder, you'd think that the money be paid, or that would be a lot further down the line where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to reveal too much, but I've had contact with this mythical figure, Henry Mauriss. I've seen text message that has been sent. I've seen emails that have been sent. I was told it was a credible bidder by people I trust. So that's the only reason I reported it. But for me, if it was going to be done, it would have been done by now. So, as I say, I got a call this morning. They're still talking. They could, it could happen. But how long do you need to talk? I think Amanda Staveley's first bid, remember the one in 2017? They were talking for months, weeks, and it didn't go anywhere. So look, I'm not taking it seriously anymore, but I'm assured by the people who know him and are privy to the information of the bid and the negotiations that it is serious. But that doesn't mean I do anymore. I'm cynical with takeovers. They either get done or they don't. So if it's not done now, and the interest was July, August, when he supposedly had the money in place, it should have been done by now.
I think the worrying thing with me, and I think we spoke about this as well, Shell, months and months back, when I done a quick video on Mauriss, and I point out in that video, he does seem like a mythical person trying to find information out on him online. He's probably at one point in Newcastle, he's probably the most searched man. And I swear to God, there's two photos of him. One is in black and white, probably from about 1954, and there's another one that's blurrier than Daryl Mitchell's Wi-Fi connection. It's for this millionaire, billionaire to have nothing publicly available online. It just rang alarm bells for me. I'm not sure about you, Shell.
Wow, I'm a criminal lawyer, aren't I? So less online. Better for me, I suppose. I can't even really remember the conversation. I think Luke and I might have had a conversation about Henry. I wasn't convinced that it was a credible bid, but I think what Luke says is quite interesting, because he's not a fan. He can be a bit more skeptical, and he can question articles a bit more. And I think sometimes it's very difficult for journalists who are massive fans of the club. And look, don't get me wrong, I wanted to come on here and say I want the best for our club. That's what I want. I don't want to be pouring disappointment and legal shit all over really exciting news. Of course I don't. But what I do know is, from the Henry saga, from the Saudis, what did happen is that fans got treated like shit. They got treated with contempt from various different bodies, and the whole thing just does demand answers. It absolutely does, in the way that it came about. And from that perspective, I think that's what's important, to just make sure that we are still remaining skeptical, having basically been mugged off by so many different ways from the old takeover. That's why now, as soon as something comes out, we do need to be a bit more skeptical. And that's not to say let's not get excited. I would absolutely love it if some money got poured into this club, if we could get rid of Ashley. My views on the Saudis, whether that's the right place for it to go, it's a separate conversation. But people seem to think that I'm stepping in to, piss on their bonfire just because I like to spend my day arguing on Twitter. Like, I get paid a lot of money to do my job, and all I've tried to do is just to say, let's just hang on a minute and look at the facts. But because this is going to not get done in a day or a week or even a year, realistically, with the Competition Appeal Tribunal. It's going to take a really long time, and everything that's been said isn't actually exactly right. So that's the only reason that I've kind of, jumped on the bandwagon. And I think I might have had a go at Luke about Henry and said, look, what can you actually tell me about this? And that's all I've ever tried to do, because I do get fans in my inbox saying, this takeover is affecting my mental health. It's really unfair and I don't understand. And that's all I've ever tried to do, is just to break it down into what I actually do know.
Yeah, I think going months and months back, when the whole Saudi bids were linked, and obviously, Shelley, you were doing the podcast, and we had God knows how many people involved doing podcasts at the time. And a lot of people were taking things of what we were saying as gospel, but it wasn't opinionated pieces. It was basically you using your background and your job to literally switch it from your aspect in your area into similar what would be with the takeover. And it's the same process, just because it's different things. It's the exact same process. And the same's happening right now, where people are coming out at you and saying, well, you're not this sort of lawyer, you're not this sort of solicitor. But at the end of the day, the court proceedings, as far as I understand what you're saying, they're the same no matter what.
Yeah, so in criminal proceedings, there's criminal procedure rules, and in civil proceedings, there are civil proceedings. So civil procedure rules, and there is actually, annoyingly, in competition law, they kind of have their own set of rules, but they're all very similar, and the process is still the same. And obviously now I work at a corporate firm, so a massive multinational corporate firm, and they obviously deal with these transactions every single day, and doing my job in every different department touches on that transaction and how it works. So I've never said, and I've always caveated my advice, and I do so in my inbox when I get asked on the daily questions. They don't seem to mind when they want legal advice, that I'm not an employment lawyer or whatever. I always caveat my advice, but everything that I've said, I also feel like here we are again, me and Luke in the spotlight, justifying, as a lawyer, I'm justifying why a piece of journal writing is incorrect. I checked it with a very senior lawyer at my firm today. He hasn't written a textbook on it, but we had a conversation, and everything that I said, he was like, that's exactly right. If I can literally drag it out of myself, I will write a thread explaining why the article is incorrect. But the long and short of it is basically a very, very complicated procedure, which requires lots and lots of rules to be followed, which will take at least, a year, has been in the article that obviously everyone is going to want to talk about, has been made to seem that it's a week. It's a process that will happen very, very quickly. And phrases have just been thrown around like the books will be open. That's not how disclosure works in civil cases. And so, I'm absolutely sure this Silk that they've got on board has got, a decent argument for everything that's being said. I note that he didn't write the letter. The letter just says he's contributed to it. And if there were deep pockets, then I don't know where the solicitors are at. But, that skepticism aside, I don't doubt he's a decent Silk. I don't think just throwing about his CV when barristers are self-employed and literally have a duty to promote themselves necessarily means a lot. I don't think throwing around well, he's in the legal 500 means a lot, because if you're actually a solicitor, that people pay to join those directories. So listen, I don't know him. I've always been honest. I don't know that Silk. You don't make Silk if you're not very good, but ultimately there are hundreds of Silks that I wouldn't use, and solicitors don't go to the 500 to decide which one to use. They call up their mates who've seen them in court or use them on cases and say, is this who we should use? And those throw up different results. So all I'm saying is, before we all get really, really excited again and think that we're finally getting rid of Mike Ashley, why don't we just step back and ask a couple of questions about whether two fans are going to make a corporation who we already have a lot of skeptical thoughts about, and I agree with that. Are they going to get them to court within the next few weeks to change their mind? I don't think so.
I think, can I just pick up on what Cheryl said there? I want Mike Ashley gone. I want the takeover to go through. I've said that for 13 years. 2 years ago, if you went back to my Twitter feed, for example, people said, oh, Luke's great, he just gets it, he understands Newcastle, he understands the fans, thank you, Luke, for taking on Mike Ashley. But Cheryl's right, we need to look with takeovers. Mike Ashley probably put it best when he said it won't be played out in public. I mean, he said that himself, that he said it won't be played out in public, you'll just find out it's happened and it'll be done. Now, every takeover that's failed has been played out in public. Now, legal action is pretty much the same. There was a press release emailed round, within minutes of the I'll name the paper, because look, it's a good story. They got a good story. Shields Gazette, they got the story, but there was a press release attached to it, and it was emailed round to journalists. Why not just threaten the legal action? Why do you need all the publicity around it? Why do we need to know who this Silk is, as Cheryl said? I quite like that expression, actually, Silk. It conjures up all sorts of images of what they're wearing. But anyway,
like your bed sheets.
Yeah, my bed sheets are Silk. Yeah, black Silk. Anyway, no, but look, why are we generating publicity all the time? Why do we need stories everywhere? Why do we need a constant update of we're doing this, we're doing that? Look, I get it. You know, they want a bit of publicity around it. They think that's going to generate pressure on the Premier League. It won't generate pressure on the Premier League. The Premier League have shown for the last 6 months that they won't buckle to public pressure. They don't care what the media are writing. I've said ages ago, back in probably June, I said we need an answer on this takeover. The Premier League need to tell us exactly what's going on. They completely ignored that. I've stuck up for the fact that the Saudis are trying to buy a club, that, you know, if the Queen can meet the King of Saudi Arabia, if we can sell arms to them, if we can not condemn the human rights record, the government I'm talking about, then it's not up to football fans to say, look, we don't want these as owners. That was completely ignored. They ignore everything. They're not going to buckle because somebody sent round a letter saying we're going to take legal action, accompanied with a press release saying these are the reasons why we're taking legal action. They're not going to listen to that. They will listen to the legal arguments. And as you know, Shell's put the nail on the head. I've taken separate independent legal advice. I've shown that letter to people, and they said exactly what Shell said. They said it's flimsy at best. So look, I hope it happens. I hope they get them into court. I hope they force the takeover to happen. But we're right to be cynical. We are right. And Shell is a legal expert. I've spoken to legal people about this. They've said exactly the same thing as Shell. So to have a go at a Newcastle fan who's just trying to keep you up to date with what's going on and keep you know, the right information. And because people don't want to hear that, they want to hear that this story in the Shields Gazette is right and the takeover is going to happen. You're going to join the dots and it's going to force all this pressure. People don't want to hear that. But Shell is telling the truth. She's offered an opinion. I've heard exactly the same thing from legal people. So why are Shell and I, and don't worry about me, I'm used to it. I'm absolutely fine with it. But why are people having a go at a female lawyer who's a fan, who's just trying to keep people straight on what's happening and a little bit of realism and a little bit of caution? She's absolutely right to do so. So look, Newcastle fans want to be told the takeover is going to happen. It's going to happen. It's hashtag cans. We all wanted that. We've had it for months. It's been going on since January. It's now November. We still haven't had cans. I'm drinking wine out of a plastic cup, which is a low. I do have glasses. I don't know why I've got it in a plastic cup. But look, we're just urging caution. We're not saying doesn't mean anything, that it might end up in court. It might be this great legal win. They might do that. But my legal information is that won't happen. The Premier League will just dismiss it. If it goes to court, the Premier League will just say there's no case to answer, and they'll give their reasons why. So look, let's not build up false hope and excitement and expectations. Let's just be cautious, wait and see what happens, and stop telling fans that this is this seismic moment that's going to lead to the takeover happen, because it isn't at this stage, and I doubt it will be. I've got to be honest, I very much doubt it will be. So
I think Shell's in a similar position of what you were a few months back, Luke, not long after we did the first podcast, where you were quite dubious of the Saudi takeover, not the takeover and the interest itself, but if the Premier League would sanction this and let it go ahead. And obviously a lot of the journalists were saying it's happening, it's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I think you were one of the only ones that came out and said, be cautious about this one. And 3 months down the line, we're here. At the point now, I'm not even sure.
I was right. Was I right or wrong? In the summer, all those people who said I was a knobhead or a wanker or didn't want the takeover to happen, was I right to urge caution? Yes. The Telegraph, myself and my colleague Jason Burt, wrote on the Monday, the takeover cannot progress. And people in the fan base screamed fake news. Doesn't know what he's talking about, hasn't got the contacts. I think that's a phrase that's been used. This is nonsense. It's not true. 2 days later, I think it's the Wednesday, wasn't it? We got the statement from the buyers have withdrawn. So look, I do know what I'm talking about. I haven't got everything right. No journalist in this story's got 100% record. Nobody. But I was right to urge caution. I had my doubts probably from the end of May, probably mid-May, I think, when he started getting into the piracy stuff. And we were right to say that. All those people who said, every journalist, I think, pretty much every newspaper, including the Telegraph actually, but not by me, but we were all told by the buyers that it was days away, that there were no red flags. I think if you look back, every journalist up here said it's going to happen, no red flags. So why should we believe anything more? Because there were red flags. There was a massive red flag, which they knew about from May onwards, but yet briefed for another 6 weeks that there were no red flags. So look, I'm cynical. I question everything. I said that right at the start of this. But I was right to question this. And if a takeover happens, I will be absolutely delighted. But I will go back to what Mike Ashley said. It will just happen. We won't hear about it. And I firmly believe that's correct.
So I've got one question just to wrap up the whole Saudi takeover there. At what point are we at now? Did this get rejected by the Premier League? Did Was it the fact that the Saudis and PIF pulled out? Like, I don't even know anymore. Like, I honestly don't know.
Yeah, well, I think they said they wanted. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. This hasn't been said by the Premier League, but I think they basically wanted some information on who was controlling the PIF, which is the Crown Prince. He's the chairman of the PIF, which was the problem. They couldn't distinguish the PIF, which is a separate legal entity, which I know Shell said in the summer, I think. It's a separate legal entity, but it all comes back to the fact that the chairman of the PIF is the Crown Prince. It's an absolute state. There is no democracy in Saudi Arabia, basically. So they wanted information on what the Crown Prince's role would be. I think the Saudis said, we don't do that. We don't justify anything. And it just got in this logjam. Now, the buyers said, no, the PIF is completely separate. He'll have nothing to do with the football club in the running of the football club. So why are you asking? So the Premier League said, OK, we'll go to independent arbitration to get over this logjam, this block in this kind of, they couldn't progress because the Premier League were asking for something the buyers didn't think they needed to give. They didn't go to independent arbitration. They didn't do the things, they didn't provide the information they were after, and they didn't go into independent arbitration. So it just got stuck and nothing's changed. It's still stuck. They said in September, they said, oh, we're going to have meetings with the Premier League. We think it will happen this time. They didn't change anything. So I don't know why the buyers, Shell might be able to explain this a little bit more than me. I don't know why they won't just go to independent arbitration, because there is a chance that the independent arbitration will say, well, no, that's right. The PIF is a separate legal entity, and the Crown Prince, they operate without the Crown Prince having to make all the final decisions or all the final calls. Why not go to independent arbitration? I don't understand that.
I think, Shell, did you not do a podcast on this with the chap from the football law, quite in depth with the different
That's
entities?
what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, we did. And ultimately, obviously, there are lots of things that we don't know, particularly with whatever's happening with Mike Ashley and Nick DeMarco QC. That is obviously happening behind the scenes. And so in that sense, we don't know what's happening there. We don't know why they didn't go to independent arbitration. I think partly because the Saudi state didn't feel like they had to be that level of transparent, and maybe they just thought that they could push it through. There's lots of different reasons why they might not have gone to arbitration. I wrote a tweet saying, well, at that point, we didn't even know if it had been rejected, so why would you then go to an appeal? And also, we just don't know. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has got opinions about whether they're still interested. Whether, and this is all great that we're challenging the Premier League, but ultimately, if the Saudis still don't want to buy the club, then that makes it very difficult as well. So from that perspective, I think all I've ever tried to do is, and there's been so much confusion, there's been so much unknown, and obviously there have been journalists saying, peddling different stories, and that's totally understandable, but all I've ever tried to do from that perspective is just to be like, here are the legal bits that do add up or that they don't add up. And obviously, at the beginning, I was fairly positive the takeover would happen. So I'm not either saying that I'm never wrong, just that the bits of the law usually do add up.
Yeah, honestly, I think I don't really want to speak too much more about it, because it just seems like we're jumping 4 months back and we're just going to go on and on and on. It's just, I said earlier, it's a vicious circle, and I think there's a lot of people that have got a lot of answer for who were involved with the takeover, I would say. So including the likes of Stavely, the Rubens, Stavely's husband, people that were involved that asked fans to get on board and put pressure on the Premier League. Fans did that.
They kept their side of the bargain. They did everything they asked, and then nothing changed.
Fans did that, and the only thing you see now are cryptic tweets and retweets by people. You've got Alan Deck jumping on board. You've got Stavely's husband. You've got all these people, and what is going on with Twitter at the minute?
Do you know any deals that are done because of a tweet?
Exactly.
Has any multi-million-pound deal been done because someone tweeted something? No, they haven't.
Or big bread.
Exactly. Well, the Rubens can buy the club outright if they wanted to. That's another thing we need to say. They could rescue this deal and just say, right, we'll replace the Saudis, because they're worth 18 billion quid. The Saudis withdrew. We were told that was in the statement. We're told they're keeping a watching brief and they'll come back in if they need to. I will guarantee you one thing, though. The Saudi Arabian government will not be called to a courtroom in the UK, an open courtroom, to justify anything. They just won't do that. Do they really need... This is actually, there's a big thing about sport washing, about the takeover, and that Saudi Arabia would use it to cleanse the awful things they've done, and it would, cleanse the regime. It's been the opposite. They didn't get any sport washing out of this. They got completely opposite. All they got was negative publicity. That's all anybody talked about. They didn't even get the football club. They just got a load of bad PR, if you want to call it that. It highlighted everything. It talked about the piracy issue. It talked about the human rights record. Talked about the alleged murder of journalists. It didn't work for them. They must be furious. They must be very, very wary now of coming back in, unless they are told by the Premier League director, yeah, it's done, you can come back in. And I don't think the Premier League will do that.
The whole thing, the piracy as well, obviously there was huge concerns about the piracy, but obviously they've just signed up to be F1 track, haven't they?
I know.
And they've been illegally streaming F1 races for God knows how many years. So
I
take that with a pinch of salt.
Well, that's the hypocrisy of it all, isn't it? I think is that the Premier League took this. The Premier League had their product stolen. We can't. That's to boil it down into something. They had their product stolen. I think if the Saudis had played ball at that any time in the takeover and said, right, okay, that's fine. They banned BIN in the middle of all this. You can't watch the Premier League legally anymore in Saudi Arabia. If they'd have just gone along, played the game and said, okay, Premier League, we'll do this. We're very sorry. We'll admit that we were wrong. I think they'd have the football club. But that's not the Saudi Arabian regime. That's not how they do things. And I think their refusal to kind of compromise and admit any wrongdoing at any point, it's just as I say, it's stuck in a logjam. It's infuriating. But why would the Premier League allow a country, which is what it would be, via its investment fund, which might be a separate legal separate legal vehicle, however? Why would you allow a country to buy a football club where you can't watch the Premier League legally at the moment in that country? Why would they do it?
One of the things which I do want to ask, no one's actually mentioned this in the comments as far as I can say, apologies if anyone has, is obviously the last few weeks, and I'll ask you both of this, in the last few weeks we've seen Project Big Six and this thing which has been going around. Do you think that had any sort of reflection or impact on the delay in the decision for the owners test from the Premier League?
I'll say possibly, and we hand over to Shell because people would be bored of my voice.
Again, I just think it's very, very difficult to say. I think the way that it was handled was not transparent, and people need answers and it needs to be explained. I think the owners and directors test on the legal face of it should have been passed. When the moral objection started coming in, then that makes it difficult. And then, there were so many other people being skeptical. Yeah, who knows what discussions were being had about the Big Six. Obviously, in my opinion, money does talk, and there are some questions by the Premier League that have to be answered for sure.
So obviously, look, you just said possibly there, and I don't think the likes of Moss has covered himself in glory during the last couple of months. Far from it. I don't think he'll be in that role very often, especially on the back of the whole PP fee stuff as well, charging fans £15 to watch games. Do you think his days are numbered now?
Again, possibly, but Shell's right. What I want as a journalist on behalf of the supporters is I want answers. I want clarification, detailed clarification of what were the information that the Premier League required from Saudi Arabia that wasn't given, because we haven't been told that. All we've been told is we requested information about some people we thought were involved in the takeover, and that wasn't provided. I want to know what those questions were. I want to know why it got blocked by the Premier League, well, not blocked, but halted. I want to know why the buyers couldn't provide that information. And I think we need to know that, because I think then we know whether it's been blocked for political, economic, depriving of competition, all those things. So that's where the legal action that has been talked about, we've talked about with the story, I think that's an avenue worth pursuing, but I don't think it will end up in a courtroom. But I would just like those answers. If the Premier League have got nothing to hide or nothing to say, they've done nothing wrong through this, then say it. Explain to us what happened and your reasons for it. Now, they are hiding behind a confidentiality agreement. They're saying we can't talk about this because it's confidential. Well, I think they should be able to, and I think maybe we should go to the buyers and say, okay, let's scrap that confidentiality of the negotiations. And if they scrap the confidentiality, then the Premier League have got nothing to hide. They've got no reason not to talk about it. I think they are hiding, and I don't think they've explained what has happened. Even I am filling in the gaps here based on not
joining the dots.
Not joining the dots, but you know, I've had the information from people connected to it about what's happened, but nobody says it in public. Nobody put their name to any of those stories in the summer that said we're days away. Nobody. It was all off the record. I know who was talking, but I'm not prepared to say who they were. But it was all off the record. People need to start putting their name to stuff. The Premier League need to explain what has happened and why. If they've got nothing to hide, then talk to us and explain to Newcastle United fans, this is why it didn't happen. These are our concerns. This is the information we requested. And I've said this in print. I've been ignored, but you know, let's not worry too much about a courtroom. And I think that's why Mike actually took the legal action he did. I've written this in the paper. I think he wanted to get people in a courtroom to do everything that I've just said. To actually, when you're in a courtroom, and Shell will know, when a lawyer is asking you questions in a courtroom, you basically have to answer them effectively. He wanted to know what had happened, why, who was responsible for it not progressing. And I hope that happens. I hope Mike Ashley gets his day in court, personally. I don't think that's progressing very well or very fast, but I think that's our best hope, to actually find out what on earth has happened and what the hell went wrong and why this takeover hasn't happened, because all of us are speculating why it hasn't happened, and I want to know 100% the reasons why it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and you mentioned the last podcast where you did look at a takeover, because people were accusing you of saying that you didn't want a takeover to go ahead. You were saying for a takeover happening in Newcastle to become the richest club in the world, that would make your job a hell of a lot more more comfortable, really, and more exciting to obviously write and go and visit all these countries and different tournaments.
Kris, I'd like to be covering the Champions League again. I'd like to be covering cup finals. I'd like to be covering semi-finals. I do go down to Manchester, and I do cover Manchester City, and I do cover Manchester United. But for all the reasons I talked about at the start of this, I want my home region, where my home is, effectively my home club. I'm not a fan, but it is the city I called home. It is that club. My wife's a Newcastle fan, as I said. I would love that. Absolutely love that. I was, at the end of April, start of May, I was absolutely sold on this. I had misgivings about the Saudis, and I wouldn't have been quietened about that. I would have highlighted the problems with having an owner like that, and I wouldn't have allowed them to just merely sports wash. I would have been very keen to talk about the human rights, etc., 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 etc. But in a purely football club terms, it was the best thing that could have happened to me professionally. It was absolutely brilliant. I would never have to be worried about being told you've got to move to Manchester again. I would have absolutely loved it. I've written countless times before that Newcastle United are the last Premier League club worth buying. The last Premier League club that's actually, if you get it right here, if you put some money in, it will be amazing. It will be incredible if somebody gets it right here. A city that would actually appreciate what Manchester City have got, for example, which is just lost within this greater Manchester area. I would absolutely love it to happen, but that doesn't mean I can ignore my misgivings and my cynicism and my doubts just because I want something to happen. I'm not paid to express I want something to happen. I'm paid to offer my opinions, what I know, what I think, and that's all I've done. I would love a takeover to happen. Absolutely love it. If it's the Saudis or whoever else, it will be. I've waited, 13 years now for a takeover to happen, probably. Yeah. And I'm stuck in purgatory along with everybody else, professionally and personally.
I just want to say there's been a comment in there saying that PAF are looking at buying Derby. It's not PAF, this one. That's the other one. That's BZG group. I think it's the Bin Zayed group, isn't it, that are interested in buying Derby. So it's not them. So that's another field takeover that we can talk about another time.
Oh, God. There's been 10. I think it's 10 or 11 failed takeovers, I think there's been now.
I think Mike actually put the club up for sale the year after he bought it, if I remember right.
And it's been for sale ever since.
Did he not buy the club because he had already another buyer lined up?
One of the rumours, yeah.
Ridiculous like that.
He thought he's going to flip it, I think. I'm legally, I'm not saying this is definitely what he wanted to do, but my old theory was he bought it because he thought he could get someone from the Middle East to buy it from him and make a quick profit, and then he got stuck with it.
Like a car boot sale.
Yes. Yeah.
So another person who's had a lot of comments on this one, and we'll go to Shell on this one. We'll do full circle back to you on this one, Luke, as well, because you can imagine who the next question is going to be about.
Right.
It's our current head coach, Steve Bruce. Shell, I'll go to you. Bruce, is he the man to take us forward?
No, I mean, he's really not, is he?
Oh, that was really sweet how you said that.
Oh, it was nice,
Shell.
yeah. I think he would take that from you, Shell.
I'm
I think that was all right.
I mean, it's been a day where I actually haven't thought about the man, so that's good. The last few performances have been really lackluster. We don't look like we've got any backup plan or tactics. Don't look like we can pass the ball. Don't look like we're going to score a goal. Yeah, no, I don't think he's ideal. That will no doubt get us in for some criticism from some non-Newcastle United fans who say that we should be happy. But yeah, no, obviously, I was a massive Rafa fan. I do think that we tried with Bruce. I did think we did try to give him a chance. I think we're made by the press to look as if we should be pleased that we've got him, but no, I don't. Not for me. Sorry.
Oh, what are you, Luke? So you've had some pillars, haven't you?
Yeah, no, look, I said when he got the job, give him a chance. We said this on the last podcast. Yeah. I said, wait and see what he does. I said exactly the same about Joe Kinnear, Steve McLaren, John Carver, Chris Hughton, which none of the fans wanted, and then he became this really popular figure. I think there's serious, I've sat in his press conference today, and I think he did an okay job. I think he did a good job actually last season with the mess he inherited coming in when he did. But we wanted to see signs of progress this season. So look, Steve Bruce is a friend of mine. We've talked about this again on the last podcast. If people want to go back to what it's like to have a friend who's, Kieran Dyer was one of my school friends. He went on to play for Newcastle. We talked about that in the last podcast. So Steve Bruce is a friend of mine, but I said this on the Chronicle podcast. We want to see signs of progress. Every manager needs to show signs, season on season, really, of progress. Now, the results are fine. They're okay, but we need to see more than that. He talked about this transition to an attacking style of football. I don't want to see another season of games like last season. So it's up to him. It's not up to me to say there's progress. Purely on results, it's fine. He won't get sacked by Mike Ashley on where they are at the moment. He's under no pressure at all from Mike Ashley whatsoever. Mike Ashley will be absolutely delighted with the job he's doing. In fact, he is, very happy with the job he's doing. But I can cope with Newcastle finishing 13th, but I can't cope with another season of the crap football. So I've said all this to Steve. I said it to him last season privately. He's tried.
Can't cope with the crap, Steve.
Well, I can't cope with the crap football. He came in after the Norwich. Remember the Norwich 0-0? And I just said...
What did he say?
He said, I know. He said, he said that was fucking shit. And we need to change things. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for now, because I think that's fair, because they've only lost 2 games this season. I think the League Cup is huge for him, because I think if they beat Brentford, they're in the semi-final. I think that's great. But progress isn't just about getting more points than the previous season. I think if he did that, fine, I would still argue, okay, we've seen progress. But we're not. They're 14th. They're 14th in the table, and they're still playing really bad football. So,
and that's with quite a lenient running as well. Sort of.
Yeah, the season, they've lost 2 games, so results are fine. And he's not under any pressure from the person who owns the football club. So we need to remember all that. But there needs to be sign of progress. If we get to January, February, and I know I said judge him after 10 games, that's fine. I will judge him after 10 games. I'll assess where they are, how good the start to the season's been, whether he's under any pressure or should be. But really, if we get to the end of another season that was like last season in terms of the quality of football, I don't want to watch that. And I think you'd have to then say, okay, Steve, you've had 2 seasons, and we're still grinding out results. It's not just about grinding out results. We have to have entertainment as well, particularly when the manager has gone on the record and said, I want to play more adventurous, more attacking football. So he'll be judged on that. He'll be judged on that by me, and I'm sure he'll be judged on that by everybody else.
Yeah. So someone's commented in, say, because you said at the very start there, Luke, that what mess did he inherit? But I think I can answer that one for you, mate. And this has come from a Newcastle United fan. I think at the end of the day, we've got to remember that we lost our 2 top goal scorers last season. We lost both Rondon and Perez at the start of a new season, brought in a £40 million striker who managed to score 2 goals, if I remember correctly. So that's a huge loss in the team, losing your 2 top goal scorers. I think after that, was it one of our defenders who was third?
And Diarmé went as well, so they lost a huge amount of Premier League appearances as well. That's the other thing you need to remember.
So I think, obviously, just to wrap that up, I think that I'm assuming that's what you meant by.
Well, Mess. He also came in 3 weeks before the first game of the season, didn't he? I think was it that close? It was China, wasn't it?
Yeah, travelled over China, mate, and he didn't fit into his training gear at all.
No, and he inherited a mess in this hugely popular manager who we all loved. I didn't like the reasons Rafa gave for leaving, and I will argue that till I'm blue in the face. But I loved Rafa, and I got on really well with Rafa, and I was pretty close to Rafa, actually. But look, he inherited a mess because Rafa Benitez left 5 weeks before the season ended. He ran down his contract, and Rafa could have said at the end of May, June, I'm going. Why didn't he say that? We were told when he left, I made up my mind then, well, why didn't he say that? And then they could have had more time to bring in a manager. He came in because no one else wanted the job. And he did a pretty good job in his first season. But so far this season, I don't think he's doing a good job in anything but results.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, mate. John's commented in and saying, I think he means that Bruce inherited St. Maximum. We've got to remember that Rafa Benitez did not want this player. So
have you seen the Isaac Hayden? Have you seen the Isaac Hayden interview in the Athletic today with my friend George Colkin, where Hayden actually says Rafa could not have worked with St. Maximum. Like it just wouldn't have worked at all because Rafa demands sort of robots. Effectively, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he didn't want St. Maximum. He didn't want Joel Linton. So when we say Rafa didn't want Joel Linton, he also didn't want St. Maximum. So there's checks and balances, which is what I try and do in the job. So look, Rafa was great, did a great job, good job, not a great job. He did a good job, but the way he left, I didn't like it, and that's what I mean by Bruce coming in. But look, Bruce did a good job in his first season. So far, he's not doing a good job in anything but results.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, this is what frustrates me. I'm not. I think as a not just personally, but as a YouTube channel, as a Newcastle fan base, and everyone involved with this channel, we did try and give Bruce a huge chance at the very start of this, and we're defending left, right, and centre. Apart from that Norwich game at the very start of the season, we got absolutely battered, and I wanted him sacked right there and then. But like you said, it wasn't a great season. We did well to finish where we did at the end of it. It wasn't nothing memorable. 10 years' time, I won't remember last season. But people are saying that Bruce has had £100 million to spend. Bruce hasn't really spent that money. And I'll say that as a fan. He hasn't spent that money. Those players have been brought in for him. And the likes of St. Maximum and Joe Linton were agreed before Bruce even stepped through the door.
Neither of them were anything to do with him. He said he signed them off. He did. They were already signed. He just, what you're supposed to do 3 weeks before the season, say, no, I don't like them. We'll go and get my own targets. He didn't know he was going to get the job until 3 weeks before the start of the season. And the window shut. It didn't carry on, did it, when the season started? So, Joe Linton has been, as much as I like the guy, I interviewed him recently, he's been a disaster for 40 million. And he's had 100 million to spend. Okay, the club has spent 100 million. Steve Bruce hasn't had that money. And his spend this summer was £35 million. That's the lowest spend they've had since they came up. So this idea that he's been back with loads of money, he couldn't sell anyone. Do you remember? Like they couldn't get rid of anyone from that squad this summer for money.
There's about 5 of them. There's about 5 of them that haven't made the squad just because we couldn't get rid of them.
He spent 35 million, which is the lowest spend because of coronavirus. So there's mitigating circumstances, but that's the lowest spend they've had since they got promoted in the summer. So he's done well with the money he got. And I want to see improvements because the squad is undoubtedly better on paper than it was at the end of last season. So I want to see improvements, but this idea that he's had £100 million to spend, the club has spent £100 million. Steve Bruce didn't have that money. If you look at the money he has spent, the 35 million, Shell, you tell me, do you think that was with that 35 million, he did pretty well in terms of who he brought in?
Yeah, I think he did. I think I have a concern that Bruce is a bit of a yes man to Ashley in some senses. I think he brought carefully and wisely, but I think the problem that we saw specifically in the last game was that he doesn't know how to put those players together, and he doesn't know when things are going wrong and we can't put a ball like 3 passes together. He doesn't know how to change things up, or I don't know whether that's to do with how it's training and, you know, whether he's got support of all the players fully. But it seems to me that something is missing and it's not quite fitting together. I don't feel like our WhatsApp group should have to have a 20-minute chat about what the hell formation is being played. That concerns me.
I think he needs well, I don't want to slag off people, but I think he needs a better coach alongside him. I think what Steve Bruce is good at is the man management. The players like him. We can tell they like him. They're playing for him. You know, St. Maximin running over to celebrate his goal after, you know, that incident where he supposedly had a bust up. I almost feel he needs a more progressive, more innovative, more modern coach who takes
Isn't
the
that
training.
his job though?
Well, yes,
His job.
yes, it is. But if you look at Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, I know we're going back in time, but Ferguson wasn't doing the training sessions. He wasn't really a great tactics guy. He was the manager and the man manager who sat back and watched the training sessions and then picked the team, and he knew the personalities and he motivated people. I think Steve Bruce is fine at that. He's not an innovator though, is he? He's not. We can, you know, he's not. He's never been an innovator. He played 3 at the back in the Championship with Hull, but he's not an innovator. And I just wonder whether Steve Agnew and Stephen Clements are the right people to have alongside him. I almost think he needs a younger, more dynamic coach, and then maybe we would see a little bit of an improvement in the style of play. I think Steve Bruce's strengths lie in his man management, his motivation skills, his ability to keep the dressing room shielded from the criticism, and I think he does that very well. But I just wonder whether we might see, as Shell has just very correctly said, in the style of play and the way the team lines up and the way it implements those tactics, I wonder if he'd benefit from having a different voice, a different coach alongside him.
The worrying thing for me, that is the likes of someone who's going to be that man manager. It goes back, we mentioned this on the podcast last week, it might be in the one that you weren't, Shell, is that Bruce comes across a bit like the Terry Mack sort of understudy to the manager. And I don't really want my manager to be that man manager to take players aside and be like, oh, don't worry about it. You've referred to Alex Ferguson there. Alex Ferguson had the likes of, was McLaren underneath him at one point.
Yep.
McLaren was always told, a fantastic coach, fantastic man manager. Is the case where Bruce may have been better as that number 2 role with a more dominant and stern manager above him?
No, I think the Steve Bruce you see in the media isn't quite the same Steve Bruce who is the manager and the person. I think we need to ask the players what he's like, actually, because I'm not in the training ground. I don't know 100% what he's like. You know, you've hit the nail on the head there. You talked about Ferguson. He had McLaren, who was the Portuguese guy who went on to manage. His name's gone, and now I'm embarrassing myself. I can't remember who it was. He had that Rune Meilenstein, whatever he was called. He always had
a few.
He had good coaches around him, and that's kind of my argument, is that Bruce is good at the man management side of that. Everybody who's worked with him or played with him says that, but is he a tactical genius? No, he's not.
But he's got to have a bit though, hasn't he?
Well, he has got a little bit, yes.
He's got to work out how his players work together, surely.
Yeah, well, we hope so, yes. I'm not saying he can't do that. I just wonder whether he would benefit from having somebody different alongside him. And Steve Agnew is, you know, he's a good coach, but is he an innovative coach? Is he a Graham Potter style coach? Is he, no, we can do this, Steve, we can play the game this way. And that's almost, football management is not so much about, often Brian Clough, I'm going to go, I sound really old now, but Brian Clough hardly spent any time on the training ground. Peter Taylor did all the training. He just spoke to them on a match day and could spot a good player and said the right thing at the right time and motivated them and shielded them and encouraged them. You know, I just don't know whether Steve Agnew's the right guy for Steve Bruce. I can't believe I'm saying that, and this will probably get back
honestly, Luke, the podcast I wasn't there on Monday, but Shell confirmed this because she jumped in for me. Is the Always Smile Faces podcast covered this at a decent length in regards to Steve Bruce's coaches? And maybe it's a change which is due.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe Bruce has got to stop being so loyal to the likes of the coaches and think maybe I need somebody younger by my side.
Yeah, no, he's, you know, maybe that is his downfall. He's too loyal to the people around him, the people he likes, the people he trusts. As I said, he's a friend of mine. I'm not going to deny that. And I'll be friends with him long after he leaves Newcastle because he's a thoroughly decent human being. And people say, oh, God, yeah, Geordie, mate, he's a nice guy. Look, I have personal relationships with people. No one can tell me what I feel about somebody I know and have known for a long time and have socialized with and gone out with, that doesn't cloud what I write. We'll go back to Kieran Dyer, one of my best friends growing up. I still criticize him, still attacked him. I don't just get stories from Steve Bruce, but look, that doesn't matter. But I have to say, he might need someone who's a bit more dynamic, innovative, imaginative alongside him to actually for this to work long term.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Right, I'm just going to put it out there now. If anyone's got a question that they want to answer, there, we'll go for another 5-10 minutes. Because it's coming up 10 o'clock there, and everyone once again have another couple of drinks before bedtime. So, let's have a quick look to see if there is anything. There's loads about Bruce. I think we've covered Bruce enough, to be honest with you.
Can I just say something? Because we were talking to Shell beforehand. Look, the abuse that Shell has got the last few days is absolutely repugnant, and she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve it at all. I don't mind people disagreeing with anybody, but stop abusing people. Stop being nasty about someone. Stop bringing someone's sex into it. Stop bringing personal shit to people. I can deal with it, but look, there are a lot of people out there on Twitter who can't deal with it. I'm not saying Shell can't, by the way. I'm just saying, just have a think about the impact of what you're saying to people on social media, because it's shit. My daughter got shit in the summer from Newcastle fans, from people she knew, and that fucked me off. I'm allowed to swear, aren't I? That fucked me off more than anything that was said to me in the summer. Don't bring my fucking family into anything. They're nothing to do with this. So look, I've talked to Shell beforehand. She's coped with it really, really well. I think she's handled it superbly. Stop whipping up abuse for people if you are in a position where you can whip it up. Just respect people a little bit better, be a bit kinder, be a bit nicer, and stop being dickheads. Sorry, bit of a preach there at the end.
You've hit the nail on the head. I think at times you see the best and the worst of social media. And I think the last 24, 48 hours, we've seen the worst of it. And I want to give a positive on social media. The likes of obviously Luke, I met you through social media. I met Shell through social media, God knows how many years ago now. And everyone associated this channel, apart from obviously Adam behind the scenes with my brother, Decca, and Mark. Everybody else that works for this channel and produces content, they've all came through social media. So some of my closest friends I've met just through that NUFC hashtag. So if don't give up on it, honestly, just because it's a bad day, it's a bad few days, and people are giving you shit. Don't give up on it, because Newcastle United fan base, we've seen in the last week how great of a fan base we can be.
Mm-hmm.
If we can put our heads together, we can be fantastic. There's no other fan base out there that can dissect things up the way that we can. We're looking at bread. We're working out percentages of how bread has been cut and stuff like that. And I wouldn't want to be a fan of any other club right now. And I know it's so shit at the minute, but like I said, the people I've met through social media, I wouldn't change that for the world.
No, well, that's right. It's the rough with the smooth, isn't it? It's the good with the bad. And I know I even had I think I had a little bit of a Twitter clash with Shell in the summer. I think
I made you call you a prick in the WhatsApp group, I think.
Did she? Yeah. Did you call me a prick, Shell? That's fine. She kept it private though. She didn't call me a prick publicly.
It's actually much worse than that.
Charming. Well, that's
and equally, I haven't called anyone a prick, and I haven't lied about anyone. All I've just tried to do is just say, let's just hold on a minute and look at some legal facts. And I don't have anything against any of the people. Like as Luke said, I've called him out. I call it out as I see it. And if you're going to start unfollowing me and setting the dogs on me because you believe a journalist over a lawyer, I just think it's a bit mad. And like Luke says, you know what? I'm absolutely fine, because this isn't my day job. Like, I comment on these things because I think it's helpful to provide a balanced, skeptical view with some of the journalists in the Northeast. Personally, I don't feel the need to brag about what I do, but I'm actually like a really decent lawyer and I work for a pretty massive firm. So I don't need to be jumping on Twitter and being insulted by people on the daily. And the reason why, and I'm sure in a couple of days' time I will be like, fine, it's absolutely cool. I'll go back to answering 1,000, inbox free legal questions every day. But you just think a bit like, I'm actually doing this. I'm not getting paid. Nothing that I write is part of my job. I'm genuinely doing it because I care about the club. So people are going to start making personal insults, and I just had some death threats today. Like, if people are going to be like that about it, then literally what is the point in me taking time out of my day share those insights. That's just how I feel about it. And like I say, in a couple of days' time, I'll be like, it's absolutely fine, and I'll, realise that it's very fickle. And I do try not to respond because, obviously I'm careful. I tweet in a personal capacity, but I am a lawyer. So if people start saying to me things like you're lying, I think people just need to just relax a bit, because everybody's desperate for a takeover and everyone's desperate for good news. COVID's bloody shit. But just if you actually look at what I've said in my tweets, I haven't called anyone a liar. And I didn't actually think any of the tweets that I sent were that controversial. I mean, crikey. But now you said about the bread, I should have thought how they would be broken down. But people are upset. Ask me about it. Let's have a constructive discussion. Let's not be arguing about who's the better fan or who's the better podcast. I couldn't, as you know, Kris, I couldn't give a shit about the podcast. I generally try and avoid people. I do. So, people say, oh, you're just on it for the numbers. I'm honestly really not on it for the numbers.
Can we just clarify, Michelle? You don't give a shit about the podcast. You don't give a shit
I love the
about
podcast, but
the publicity you get off the back of the podcast.
I literally don't, and in that sense, when I say I don't want to be on it, you'll send messages around and I'm like, for me, it isn't about that. It isn't about numbers or popularity or anything. It just isn't. I turned down going on lots of other podcasts and stuff. So for me, it's just about, hanging out with you guys, having a wonderful Twitter community. And if I can shed some light on something, then doing that. But yeah, the reaction to some of those tweets has just been a little bit ridiculous. And like Luke says, it's a bigger picture. For me, it doesn't bother me. I'm a pretty strong person, but for other people, you do just take a minute and think that could actually really affect someone, and there's just no need for it.
Would people prefer it if I didn't respond, for example? Because most journalists don't. They don't respond. They don't engage with read. Maybe I shouldn't respond. I did make that promise to myself in the summer on holiday, and then within 2 weeks I was still responding. I can't help myself. I just can't. I like to engage with people. And, as you just said, that social media can be really good. I wouldn't be doing this podcast now if it hadn't have been for social media. I wouldn't have got to know Kris a little bit. I'm meeting Shell for the first time. We had a talk before we came on. So there is a lot of good there, but maybe I should just shut up and stop talking to people, stop answering back, because this whole, again, to talk about the wind-up thing, maybe if I didn't respond, I would never have been accused of winding up fans. But I try and talk to people. If you abuse me and are nasty to me, I will come back at you. I will. That's just me. But maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should just literally tweet my articles, which is what a lot of journalists do, and then that's it. They turn off their comments. I know journalists at the Telegraph who literally have got their comments muted. They don't get any comments at all. They don't see any of it. They don't engage with fans. Now, Twitter, when it came, I love Twitter because it was that opportunity to engage with people. And now I'm wondering whether, or I was in August, whether I should bother engaging ever again. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I like engaging with people. I like answering people back. I like arguing with people. I like being a bit of a twat, basically. Now that'll be edited down. So there you go. There's your clip. I've just said I like being a bit of a twat. So there you go, to the people who want to edit.
Mine will be edited to say I hate the podcast.
Yeah.
I think it's on Twitter now already, mate, to be honest.
I'm really annoying. George Colking is one of my best friends in the world, and we are totally different. But he would say exactly the same thing. I am quite annoying, but I'm also really nice. I'm not a horrible person. And maybe I should just shut it down, stop talking, stop engaging, stop answering people back who abuse me, stop arguing with people. But I should, but I won't. So you'll be seeing lots more of me on social media arguing with people after the Everton game.
There's been one question thrown in there, and we'll wrap this one up as quick as possible. Just one word answer. I'll do, one sentence I'll do, to be fair. Newcastle United, is it still worth £300 million?
Yes.
Shell?
Yes.
Why?
Last Premier League club worth buying.
Yeah,
Get it right.
It comes with this wonderful fan base, who I've thoroughly enjoyed all of today.
Yeah, great. Right. Well, I just want to wrap. Somebody's commented in saying that this YouTube channel used to be a good channel until tonight. I just want to put it out there that we can invite whoever we want on this YouTube channel. And I think every single person should have a chance to put their opinion on. So anybody that wants to come part of this channel, and you can see over the years, especially this season with Emil doing extra time, We invite God knows how many fans on this YouTube channel. Every single one of them has got a different opinion. The same applies to journalists. The same applies to anybody, opposition fans, anybody that wants a voice. The door is always open on this channel, and we'll always try our hardest to arrange you coming on and having a discussion. So the channel's the same. The channel will continue doing exactly what we do.
I will have a discussion with anyone on this podcast. If some people want to say, okay, I still think Luke Edwards is a tosser, I'm sure there's lots of people out there.
I still think you're a toss on it.
Yeah, great, brilliant. So, but we talk, and I will. If anyone wants to come on the podcast and call me names or ask me all these things, challenge everything I've said, I'll do it. That's fine. Not on a Friday night ever again, because I shouldn't be doing this on a Friday night. I should be doing something better.
You're on a yellow card now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am on a yellow card, but within reason. I did it on the True Faith podcast. I will have a discussion with anyone about Newcastle. All the things I've said today. That's fine. But I'm sorry you hate the podcast now I've been on, or maybe it was probably Shell actually. I think people would have enjoyed me mainly. I'm joking. They won't.
Right. I just want to say thanks to both of you for joining me tonight. I know it was a last minute thing. It's a Friday night. I've interrupted with that.
And Kris, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you again because I've been drinking all the way through this. It's great to you're looking so well. You're looking slim. Yeah. You're looking buff. You are looking hot. Right.
Yeah. Thanks, so, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, and I can.
I'm just trying to get back and good books after the old podcast.
Yeah, you're looking really well. It's good to have you back. It's good to have you back.
Thanks very much. Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Share this video afterwards, and we'll see you for our preview for the game at the weekend. See you later.